At the Global Liver Institute, we believe it all starts with a patient. So what happens when a patient, a liver patient no less, one of the 500 million people living with conditions that often go undiagnosed, untreated, or misdiagnosed, mistreated, and stigmatized, brings the challenges of liver patients front and center? And what happens when a patient then leads a discussion with world experts in policy, research, clinical care, and wellness on ways to overcome these challenges? Let's find out today on GLI Live. Hello and welcome. My name is Donna R. I am the founder and CEO of the Global Liver Institute, and I have the great privilege of being your host for GLI Live. I am especially excited about this episode today and this series that we've been doing throughout February. We're so excited that we have an extra day this year, being leap year, and we want to make the most of every day, every moment, because we know for people and loved ones living with and navigating rare diseases, rare liver diseases in particular, this is of importance all year long. So I wear my rare disease stripes proudly. And as a person who was diagnosed with primary sclerosing cholangitis, a rare liver disease in my teens, I am slightly biased towards this topic. If you have been following the series this month, we have been focusing on transitions of care. And on this episode, we are focusing and hearing directly from the caregivers, the people who make those transitions of care for us patients possible. And so without further ado, I'd love to introduce Kathy Spence from the Children's PSC Foundation and Alice Williams from the Wilson's Disease Association. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna.
Absolutely. So Alice, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your association? I'm married to a geneticist, so I know what Wilson's disease is, but please share that with our audience.
Sure. So I live in Toronto, Canada. A nice snowy wintry day up here. Just retired from a career in corporate communications. Was looking forward to a life of pickleball and golf and travel. Classic retirement. Our kids, my son is 23, my daughter's 20. My husband and I congratulated ourselves on what a great job we did raising our kids. Our son had graduated, had a job. Our daughter was in university. Then the walls caved in last December. My daughter, long story short, my daughter came home from university very bloated, nauseous, weight gain, extreme fatigue. Long story short, was tested in emergency, and thankfully they diagnosed her very quickly with Wilson disease, a disease I'd never heard of. Was not aware that my husband and I were carriers, and unfortunately passed this defective gene to her that meant her liver could not excrete excess copper, which we get in food and water. So unfortunately, her liver was so damaged, she required an emergency liver transplant. Mm-hmm. And believe me, to say this now with a smile, if I told you this a year ago, you wouldn't have been able to understand what I was saying because of the tears. We were lucky though, she went to the top of the transplant list, got her liver. She's coming up on her 1-year anniversary. What a difference a year makes for my daughter and everybody, including myself. She's doing well. She's back at school. Seems to be navigating this new normal. I always knew she was strong. I guess I had no idea. She's tough as nails. Because it's a genetic disease, we had her brother tested as we were advised. He too has Wilson disease. His liver is not as damaged, so he's undergoing treatment. It's a chelating drug that basically draws out the copper. So that's my involvement with liver disease, and sort of thrown in the deep end and am learning about this whole new world.
Well, welcome to the community. We're sorry that you ended up here, but little known fact is that there was a case of Wilson's disease diagnosed at my wedding. One of my friends was just having a discussion with some of the other wedding guests, and when most of you wedding guests are hepatologists that see we're listening with different ears, and she was able to give treatment. And so, one of the purposes of this conversation is spreading awareness, getting people to ask questions, and maybe thinking of things a little differently, both people in the general public, but also medical professionals. So we'll accomplish that today. Kathy, welcome and welcome back. And please tell us your story and how you became involved.
Yes. I have 2 children, and our daughter was showing a lot of weight loss as a teenager. And when she had just turned 16, we took her into the doctor and discovered that she had IBD. Her liver enzymes were off the charts as well. And so we started investigating that. And within 6 weeks of being diagnosed with IBD, she was also diagnosed with primary sclerosing cholangitis. So we were fortunate to get diagnosed that quickly. Kudos to the local doctors in Charlotte. She was kind of a classic PSC patient. PSC is a rare disease, autoimmune disease of the bile ducts, and 70% of PSC patients also have IBD. So she was my height, so she was 5'9.5" and weighed 103 pounds. We got her into the Kenneth Cox Stanford Children's oral vancomycin trial within a month of being diagnosed with PSC. So we were very fortunate. So she has been successfully treated with that trial drug for almost 10 years now. She's had PSC for 9 years. So she was fortunate. She does not need a liver transplant and has not progressed. But PSC is a tough diagnosis. There's no FDA approved treatment of the disease. And,
I always like saying yet to things like that.
Yeah, yet. Currently. And so she was fortunate enough to respond beautifully to vancomycin and has done very well. So I'm involved with the Children's PSC Foundation. I'm on the board, and our goal is to fund research, support patients, obviously, fund research, and find short-term, medium-term treatment and a long-term cure.
We have been supportive of that research, and the chair of the Global Liver Institute's Pediatric and Rare Disease Research Group has been highly involved, a pioneer really, in patient-centered trials in liver disease. That's and right. Making sure that research opportunities, particularly in vancomycin, are available. And so, having been long enough in the sort of patient-centered research world to remember when Jamie Haywood and others started Patients Like Me, and we were starting to add our data to in new ways to unearth findings that we as patients were experiencing and wanted to move forward as research questions. I still think after all this time, that's not given enough support and credibility and validity. Would you like to describe any challenges that you've had in supporting research in this area?
I'll keep an eye on the time constraints. Rare diseases are tough. PSC is not a pediatric disease in general. I believe the numbers are 7 out of every 100,000 people. So a city like Charlotte, which has a little over 1 million people, is going to have less than 100 patients. It's difficult because there's no money in PSC per se. The treatment that does show the best promise is a generic drug that's off label. So there's not a lot of money coming there. And it's difficult. It's a difficult diagnosis emotionally. Like as human beings, we want to fix things. And when there isn't a fix, we get frustrated and we don't really know how to dive in. One of the biggest issues with PSC in particular is it's really for most patients 2 diseases. So a PSC patient has a hepatologist and a gastroenterologist. And so siloing is a serious problem. The gastro people want to treat like they would treat typical IBD, and typical IBD medications don't necessarily work with PSC. Hepatologists are just so frustrated because there's not a lot they can do at all. we're all we have a shared addiction, which is that we are addicted to good patient outcomes. So we've kind of focused on, hey, this provides a good patient outcome, and then everyone's on board. As a parent, I dealt with a lot of siloing. We live in North Carolina. We were flying to Stanford every year, but then we also had a local North Carolina doctor. We had a local hepatologist. In addition, it's an autoimmune disease. So our daughter had a mistaken autoimmune hepatitis diagnosis. And there was a excellent clinician and researcher at Chapel Hill, Dr. Awani, who proactively went to a 5-year-old liver biopsy at the local hospital, researched it, and was able to get that diagnosis taken off of her chart. So, wow. I mean, as parents, we're the most motivated, but we're not necessarily the most qualified. Like my MBA is not necessarily helping me with this. Although it's been surprising.
Not in the ways that you may think, but it is helping, I'm sure.
Yeah, like you find yourself realizing, I need to be a top negotiator. I need to be a top researcher. I need to be an advocate.
I need to sort of do medical school just off Dr. Google, well, at least to bring yourself up to speed. I mean, in my career, I had never worked in healthcare at all. So, I'm really almost starting from ground zero, I felt.
Yes.
I think that's one of the certainly goals that we have as GLI, to help to curate information and point people towards the best sources of information so that they can accelerate up that learning curve. Every GLI Advanced Advocacy Academy starts with, liver terminology. And so that no matter what type of liver disease that you have or how you got here, you're aware of the basic terms. And also, we've had some sessions with medical librarians and others, just so people know how to do a good search. So, talking about, your MBA or my JD, one of the skills that we bring is being able to research well. And so helping people find credible medical information so that you can understand Wilson's disease, for example, or PSC, and find the latest trials and find, the best sources online, is, I think, one of the most important jobs. And I know, Alice, you've now with the association are helping to, create some of that information and help people navigate. So maybe talk about some of the work and how you now help other people get up to speed and navigate Wilson's disease information.
Well, I mean, I will, and I have to say thanks to you and Global Liver Institute, because, I just learned about this disease January 2023, quickly got involved with the Wilson Disease Association, am now a board member, was lucky enough to go to Washington last September for the GLI Advanced Academy, and what a perfect introduction to advocacy. I really, early in my kind of journey as an advocate and caregiver, did feel lost, but was embraced with open arms. And as you say, an action-packed agenda with so much learning, a sense of empowerment. So, I know Wilson Disease Association, we're so excited about the partnership with Global Liver. And, I think we share a lot of the same, values and goals to empower people. We have a very active medical advisory committee with some amazing physicians who are dedicated to this, to Wilson disease. So, we have really good partnerships in the medical community. We spend a lot on communications. My background is communications. We have a really robust communications committee. So, we have an annual conference. We're constantly revamping what we do, just trying to reach more and more people. Because as you know, like the rare disease space, I feel like it's getting traction and it's having moments, but there are 7,000, potentially 10,000 rare diseases. Yes. And the low awareness within the public and even within the medical community, it's still a lot of big hurdles to overcome.
Absolutely. So we have a great amount of power as a rare disease community. We have a great amount of sort of untapped power and potential as a rare liver disease community operating within that framework. There are more than 100 different types of liver disease, and most of them don't have an association. And so
Mhm.
becoming a home and a hub for all of those pediatric and rare liver diseases, has been very gratifying to start to do, and then to connect to larger organizations and resources and opportunities. While Kathy comes back and joins us, I wanted to come back to our theme of transitions of care, and maybe talk more about the transition of you or your daughter from home to college, dealing
Mhm.
with her disease. And what is it like with her at university? Does she come back home for visits? How is that navigation happening?
So, it's interesting because you talk about transition. So my children were diagnosed at age 20 and 23.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as any parent knows, trying to parent a young adult between like 18 to 25, if anybody can give me the manual, I would gladly read it. You're parenting, but you're not. You're doing it in a casual way, like because they're like, I've got it. I'm under control. I'm an adult. Step aside. So I find I have to sort of be a parent from the side,
Mm-hmm.
the sidelines. Obviously, when my daughter was in crisis with the transplant, she did come home for winter semester, and I
Mm-hmm.
nursed her back to health. She is back at school. I've had to be very careful. Both my children are pretty stubborn, and they the last thing they want is mom nagging. Did you take your pills? Did you drink your water?
Mm-hmm.
Are you eating? You're not drinking, right? You're not drinking alcohol, right? You can't drink alcohol. They're like, oh my gosh, I get it. So I've had to kind of do this dance with them, where it's like, let me be involved. I'm here to help you and support you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I'm amazed at their resiliency. My son is 23. He just finished university. As we all know, universities have a big party culture. He cannot drink alcohol. His liver is significantly damaged. So the last thing he needs is more toxins. I'm amazed at their resiliency. When they were growing up, before I knew they had this disease, I always thought, the biggest thing I want to teach them is resiliency, because life is going to throw them challenges. Little did I know it would be this big a challenge.
Right.
So I've had to give them space, because they've basically told me, give me space.
Because there are no other options, really. It sounds like you're doing a great job parenting a young adult. I was 24 when I was transplanted and in law school. And so, after a few months at home, while I was healing, with my mom having been in the hospital with me every day, and my father watching my little brother, and having been so invested, at some point I was like, bye, I'm going back to school. And their hearts were still pounding from the experience. And so
Yeah.
I recognized how hard it was. I also, it was an interesting experience, and very unfortunately very useful skill for me to have to go back to law school, explain what I would need to be supported to to finish graduate school, what I would need from the nurse's office. I remember having the school nurse do my lab work and then mailing it back off to the academic medical center that was analyzing and managing me. So Kathy, your experience of navigating across different states and medical teams rings really true for me. And then yes, going with my friends, and being confident in having the ginger ale, or having the club soda with lime, as we were have said throughout our dry January series. I'm like, who's in my drink like that, that they need to know, that they need to care what I'm doing. And so people should have the confidence to be able to choose, for whatever reason, to not engage in alcohol. And the number of non-alcoholic, manufacturers and mocktails. I think this is a new time where there is a greater, acceptance and celebration of people who are focusing on their, wellness for whatever reason, and choosing not to drink and having creative and fun options so they can stay part of their social circle. So hopefully that makes things a little easier for them.
Yeah, it does. As you say, there's so many non-alcoholic options now. I had a gin and tonic the other day with zero. I'm doing dry January, I'm happy to say. Anyhow, it was delicious. I felt like I was drinking a gin and tonic. It was great.
So that's, as we go from the very practical applications, someone asked me the other day, as I was, most of our viewers know that I had a medical error and was hospitalized for a good part of the fall and recovering. And one of my friends asked me if I was going to focus more on the innovation side or the healthcare delivery side after that experience. And certainly I have more attention on the healthcare delivery side and the gaps, there. But my heart and soul have always been in innovation and making sure that there were, having been transplanted when Prograf was still called FK506. I just wanted to make sure, and part of the rationale for creating GLI was to make sure that other patients coming behind me had opportunities for the same level of innovative care that saved my life and sustains me today. I've been on every class of IBD drug, created to date, and maybe exploring another one. And so, Kathy, how are you and your foundation viewing the research landscape as a whole, the regulatory landscape, and the opportunities for patients and foundations to become involved? What if you were talking to FDA or others, what would they need to do better to serve your community?
Well, I think part of what I've realized is that it's easy to get frustrated with where things are, but we need to be frustrated enough to try to change things as they are. And we also need to have enough empathy and ability to adapt to work within the systems that we have. I don't think I'll ever meet a doctor who doesn't want a good outcome for every PSC patient. I may be a lot less satisfied with the status quo than somebody who's immersed in the system, but I have to respect what somebody else's capabilities are, what is motivating them, and where they're limited. Like everybody's trying to earn a living. I had a very limited understanding of how clinicians and doctors work. I run a construction firm. And so they have limitations on what they can disclose. They have limitations on how things operate, and I need to respect that. The foundation originally started, it was a group of parents whose kids the response rate to the drug that came on is incredibly high, which is unusual. So we originally were, before I even joined it, we were raising funds for that specific trial. And we learned a lot from that. So our goal is to really be there for pediatric onset and pediatric patients. And we do tend to focus on making sure that something that has such a good effectiveness rate is available for more. So we want to make sure that other kids get the same benefit that our kids did. I mean, my daughter really got her life back, and she remains a healthy individual today. PSC is something that she takes a few pills a day for, and that's about it. Now that could change in the future, but so far so good. Research can be tricky. We have to recognize that you need resources to make research happen. And I think all of our governments, including the US, are anxious to help, but it can be a cumbersome process to access those funds as well. So we try to focus on what we can do as a foundation because we're small. We want to find projects that are nimble, that have a high return on investment for patients. And we also need to recognize the needs of the researcher. And if there is a private firm involved, what are their needs? And find the synergy there.
I think that that's an important part of the ecosystem that often goes unrecognized. We have the head of healthcare from the Milken Institute is on the GLI board, and certainly we have seen what a private individual who is affected by and wants to take on the understanding and the taking down of the barriers to good research, can do. And so as we look across, research policy, you've identified even in your story, several things like often GIs, gastroenterologists and hepatologists, and every hepatologist is a gastroenterologist,
Right.
As well. But because of that sort of educational sequence, they often can't both bill on the same patient. I learned that at the foot of my own bedside, decades ago, when they were saying, well, we have to sort of take turns on who gets reimbursed for. I'm like, but I need both of your knowledge separately. I need the GI knowledge for the IBD. I need the hepatology knowledge for my PSC. And so understanding those challenges, and as an advocacy organization, but they both need to be reimbursed, is a part of access, is a part of research policies, is a part of ensuring that patients with rare liver diseases can have good outcomes. And then being able to make sure that guidelines, professional medical society guidelines, don't have unintended consequences or foreclosing research that patients have found valuable. So training patients in A3 and in other venues to be able to sit on guidelines committees and on protocol development committees is a way of supporting research and changing the research ecosystem in addition to the funding of research. I think, all of those parts are necessary to make sure that the research that, the questions, because often research seems so like amorphous. So I'll just, put it in plain language. The questions that patients want answered: does this drug work, or does this drug work in sequence to this other drug, or does this therapy work in combination with surgery, or if someone has a pouch, or if someone has a transplant? And many of the situations that we face as patients that are sometimes in research parlance called noise, that we get answers to the questions that we feel are important. And so identifying all those points in the research process, whether it's talking with a sponsor or talking with the regulator or talking with the physician researchers, and sometimes having a vote, not just a voice, particularly if you've provided the funds and it's your table, you get a seat at it. So I think that increasing the understanding of certainly new advocates of all the places that patients can have an impact is a really important part, because certainly funding research is important, but if all those other parts aren't filled by informed, engaged, confident patients, then ultimately it fails.
Right. It's like we need to be indignant enough to have the courage to change things, but respectful enough to not destroy every relationship that's out there while we're doing it. I do have a lot of insight on transitions from peds to adult, and the transition of K through 12 and college, because we went through both.
Speak to that, please.
K through 12, first of all, if you've got somebody with a rare disease, all the mom and dad energy is in there. Mom and dad are in fight or flight. I remember we flew out to Stanford for the second visit, because we went 3 or 4 times the first year, and then we started going every year. And one of the top guys at Stanford arranged to meet with us for coffee, which was great. And I have been putting my daughter in bubble wrap. She's finally gaining weight. Everything in the house was from Whole Foods. Mama wants to fix it. And she was a junior in high school at the time. And he turned to me and said, "Mom, you need to relax, or you're going to lose her ability to acquiesce here." And I was not expecting a lecture. I was expecting a pat on the head for how great I was doing.
Sorry, Kathy, I remember saying when my son was diagnosed, I was feeling sorry for myself. And I said in the appointment with the doctor, well, I guess we did this to him or something like that. And he turned to me and he tore a strip off me.
Right.
He goes, you didn't do this to them. You're their mom. Step up and help him now.
Yeah.
And stop feeling. And I remember my son saying, I'm not going to join your pity party.
Yeah.
You
Mama
know?
got a lecture for sure. And I was expecting
And I needed it.
And he said, look, I have teenage patients. She's only home for another 18 months. And then she's going to go to college. And you're being too strict. You're micromanaging her. And she's not going to be on board.
She's going to turn away. Yeah.
He said, you need to tone it way down. Mm-hmm. She did say afterwards that she was grateful that I limited her diet because she was on steroids for a few weeks and she didn't gain 30 pounds like most of people do. Mm-hmm. But he said, look, you need to chill. And he said, she has 18 months to understand that when kids with the disease go to college, if they just go crazy, they're home before the end of the first semester.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there will be repercussions.
She said, you need to kind of slow sell this. She needs to be on board. We're in the South. She's going to go to Chick-fil-A sometimes. And that's what teenagers do. We were kind of fortunate that she was well before the age where anybody has really tried alcohol. So she knew before she'd ever had a chance to try alcohol that it wasn't really going to be part of her life. And I think one of the things that we talked about was this is not your fault, but it is your responsibility. Mm-hmm. And everybody has things where they're fortunate. She had plenty of things that were blessings in her life. And this is one of those things that isn't as fortunate. And that's just what it is. So it
may still be a blessing. So I'm just going to end on this note from, this side of 53, having been diagnosed at age 13. So good job, moms. I have had, over the course of the past 40 years, I have eaten a Chick-fil-A. I have had a drink. I have traveled. I have been outside of the bubble. Life inside the bubble is pretty good. It has made me appreciate life inside the bubble. And I love my mom. I'll see her later today. So it'll be all right. It'll be all right.
Yeah.
That's the message. I just love to end as we have to wrap up the show, unfortunately, because I could talk all
there
day.
We go.
But that's my message, that this is a little bit of a baton. Sometimes you'll have the baton, sometimes they'll want it back over the years, but altogether it'll be all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's great.
Thank you so much. I look forward to continuing to work with both of you and your organizations. You've contributed already so much to us. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Donna. And thank you, Kathy. I felt that was a bit of a therapy session. I needed to hear that again, because I still will did you take your pills? Did you drink water? They're like, oh my gosh, back off. Anyhow, thank you. It'll be all right.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Please be sure to like this video, subscribe, and share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments below. Join us weekly on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Time for more episodes of GLI Live. Check out our website, globalliver.org, and follow us on social media to learn more about the Global Liver Institute and stay up to date with the latest in liver health. Until next time, stay safe, stay well, and stay connected.